If you've seen our previous video on the building blocks UI based HUD, or if you've been playing in 3.10 during the PTU, then you've no doubt an idea of what the new HUD looks like. This represents a big change to what players are used to, and perhaps you're not sure what some of the new icons actually mean. In this video, I'll be going through the entirety of this new HUD, as well as what each of the abbreviations mean and how they affect your ship, so that you can get into the game fully prepared. I won't be covering any of the MFDs in this video, as we do already have a video on that, which you will find in the pop-outs in the top right corner or down in the description. This is going to be an extensive video, as there is a lot to cover, so the timeline has been split into sections for your convenience. With that said, don't let the large amount of information overwhelm you, as the HUD is well designed and intuitive. Either way, we would suggest that you make yourself a cup of tea before you proceed. Now with that out of the way, grab your towel and welcome to A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Verse. As already stated, I'm going to break this down into several parts. The first part will be your HUD in its most basic state, and this is how your HUD will appear in general spaceflight, with these icons being on your HUD at all times. Starting from the centre, we have two icons to take note of. The first is the targeting reticule, which consists of a cross and a dot. The dot indicates where the nose of the ship is pointed, with the cross being where the weapons are pointed. If you use mouse control and you have VJoy enabled, then you will also see a three-pronged cross and a line, which indicates the direction and distance that you have moved the mouse. This won't appear if you have gimbaled weapons in target mode, however, as the weapons will follow the mouse instead. Next is the directional marker, which looks like two arrows. This can take two forms, with arrows facing each other representing forward momentum, and arrows facing away from each other representing rearward momentum. The indicator will move around as your ship does, and appears on your HUD in the exact direction that you are travelling, or in the exact opposite if you have rearward motion. This is extremely useful if you like to fly in decoupled mode, as it allows you to line up your ship for landing pads well in advance. Moving to the left, we have the speed cluster. On the right of the cluster is the max speed indicator, which is set via the mouse wheel. This is delimited into progressively smaller sections, with each section representing roughly 10% of your ship's top speed, barring the top section, which is 30%. The larger size of the bottom sections means you get much more granularity at lower speed, which is great for fine manoeuvring. You'll notice that there is also a red mark on the bar, which is your SCM or Space Combat Maneuver Speed. As the name suggests, you want to keep your speed at or below this value during combat, as going above reduces your accuracy and can slow down or even prevent missile lock-on. To the left, in the middle of the cluster, we have your relative speed, which is indicated in meters per second. Finally, on the far left, we have the thrust, which can also be thought of as acceleration. This is controlled by holding down the right Alt key, which may be labelled Alt-GR, and scrolling the mouse wheel. This controls the amount of power that your engines put out. Another way to think of it is how far you push the accelerator in a car or turn the throttle on a motorcycle. For stick users, this can be ignored, as you can just reduce the thrust by simply moving the stick by a smaller amount. For keyboard users, however, this affords you some level of analog control. Moving down then, we have the G-force cluster. On the left is the force direction indicator. If I move left, you can see that the dot gets thrown to the right. If I go up, it gets thrown down, etc. There's no indication here for the forwards and backwards movement, however. The number on the right shows the total number of Gs being exerted. Finally, we have the G-safe marker. When this is active, the ship will never exceed more than 10 G of force, which prevents you from experiencing a black or red out. By default, G-safe is not bound to any key, but it can be bound within the game's settings. Additionally, by default, hitting the afterburner will disable G-safe, but this can be disabled too. Moving to the right, we have this cluster here. At the top, we have the landing gear indicator. It's empty when the gear is up, and it's solid when the gear is down. This will flash to indicate that the landing gear is changing state. Below this, we have the CPLD or coupled mode. When enabled, coupled mode causes your ship to behave in space much like it would within an atmosphere. Specifically, your ship will try to keep the direction of travel in front of the nose by automatically applying thrust. Additionally, your ship will automatically come to a stop unless you engage cruise control with C. Decoupled then allows the ship to follow the laws of physics, wherein the ship will continue to drift in the direction that thrust was last applied, regardless of where the nose is pointed. Essentially, it decouples the direction of travel from the orientation of your ship, giving you full control. This is toggled with the V key by default. It should be noted that coupled mode is a personal preference for everyone. I myself tend to fly with it enabled during general flight, but I disable both it and G-Safe whilst in combat. I would recommend that you try both, but coupled mode is easier to get used to. Finally, there is ESP, or Enhanced Stick Precision. What this does is it reduces the sensitivity curve of your movement input when the ship's reticule is over your targeted ship in order to aid accuracy. This has no keybind by default, but it can be disabled within the menu or set to a key. Try with and without, but it's personal preference. Moving right again, we have the gimbal cluster, which indicates the gimbal mode that your weapons are set to. This is cycled with the G key. If you have fixed weapons, then this is irrelevant. If you do have gimbaled weapons, however, then you have three options. Lock will cause the weapons to remain in a locked forward position, acting like fixed weapons and firing only where you aim the nose of the ship. Target will release the reticule from the nose of the ship, allowing it to move independently of the ship's movement, with the weapons following the reticule. Finally, there is auto gimbal, which will show a ring of dots on the screen. So long as your target pip is within range and within this ring, your weapons will automatically aim at the target. The closer you keep the pip to the centre of the ring, the quicker this targeting will happen, so keep that in mind. If using gimbaled weapons, target mode is best used by mouse users, who can capitalise upon the ability to make fine adjustments to their aim. HOTAS and HOSAS users, however, may find that auto gimbal works better for them. Finally then, we have the fuel cluster. This is nice and simple, with the top value being the amount of quantum fuel remaining in percent, that's the fuel used for quantum travel, and hydrogen fuel, the fuel used for general movement, also being displayed in percent. Now then, let's take a look at the combat specific icons that you may see. First, let's look at targeting. Upon looking at another ship, you will see an arrow appear above them, being green for the good guys and red for the bad. Pressing the relevant key, 1 by default, will pin this target, which can then be seen by the number underneath the box which appears around them. You can pin up to 3 targets currently. Alternatively, you can just target the nearest ship targeting you, or cycle through them. Targeting a ship, either from those you've pinned or otherwise, will change how they appear on your screen. At a distance, the ship will be contained within a green or red box, depending on the hostility. Once within visual range, the ship will then be shaded in the relevant colour, with its name and distance in meters shown. If the ship is not on screen, you will see a large red arrow instead, indicating where the targeted ship is. Additionally, you may see a ribbon showing where the ship has been, as well as the targeting pip for that ship. This pip, or predicted impact point, is probably the most important icon that you will see in combat. This tells you where to aim your weapons in order to account for the movement of the enemy vessel so that you can land your shots. It's red by default, but it will go green when your weapons are lined up. Note that if you have auto gimbal enabled, your reticule will snap to the pip so long as it meets the requirements. The pip will also indicate any successful hits by pulsing. Next are 3 icons which go hand in hand, and these are for missiles. First, we have your missile lock-on indicator. Tapping missile lock, which is the middle mouse button by default, will send forward 5 ring sectors, which will begin to orbit your target. These will snap into place as a solid ring once lock-on has been completed. Now just press the big red button. If you're on the receiving end, then you will see one of 3 icons appear at the bottom of the HUD, being a flame, lightning bolt, or Wi-Fi signal, denoting infrared, electromagnetic, and cross-sections missiles respectively. This tells you the sort of missile currently headed for you, so that you can take the relevant actions or launch the relevant countermeasures. Finally, for both your and your enemy's missiles, you will see a rotating triangle. These indicate the exact position of any missiles in space and are invaluable for avoiding them. Next up, we're going to take a look at the atmospheric specific icons. Atmospheric flight really only adds 2 things to your HUD, that being elevation and angle. Elevation is fairly simple, it's just your height in meters above sea level, which can be seen on the right hand side, opposite velocity. The angle indicator, seen in the centre, consists of multiple parts. The first is the reticule, which changes shape to include 2 splines, and these remain stationary in reference to the ship. Think of them as indicating the wings. Next is the roll line, which it runs across the centre. This line stays parallel to the horizon and is used to indicate the angle of the ship's roll. If it lines up with the wings of the reticule, then your ship is flying true. Any deviation, then your ship is banked. Finally, we have the pitch ladder, which indicates the pitch of your ship. This too stays parallel to the horizon. As you pitch the nose up or down, the ladder will move up and down accordingly. The numbers on either side of the ladder indicate your pitch in degrees, with positive values indicating an upwards pitch and negative a down. These values are read against the roll line. And to explain, if the line numbered 10 is in line with the roll line, then you are flying upwards at 10 degrees. If it's the line numbered -10, then you're flying downwards at 10 degrees. If the 0 line is in line with the roll line, then you are flying at a constant height. Just to note, if the numbers are upside down, then it means that the top of your ship is facing the ground. Next, let's talk about the other travel icons you may see, which don't really fit into the previous sections. First, let's look at landing and taking off elements, which only appear after contacting air traffic control. These consist of 3 parts, the first of which is the wrench, which is used to indicate the landing pad or hangar that you've been assigned. Next is the bounding box, which appears around the pad in question to highlight your designated parking spot once you get close. Finally, we have the landing splines. These only apply to Lawville and Area 18 at this time, and after requesting takeoff or landing permission. These serve to act as a guide tunnel through restricted airspace, and you should keep within them whilst entering or exiting these zones. Next, we have quantum travel indicators, which will only appear when the quantum drive is switched on. First, we have the drive indicator itself, which consists of 3 parts. The first is the center reticule, which must be aligned to the target destination. To the left of the circle, we have the calibration progress bar, which is self-explanatory. On top, we have the spool up progress bar, which again is self-explanatory. After dropping out of a long quantum jump, you may see a red cooldown bar appear on the right hand side. This bar must empty before the drive can be spooled back up. If you set a destination in the Mobiglass, then you will only see a single icon on the screen, being a diamond, indicating your selected quantum destination. If you have not selected a destination, however, then dotted around the screen you will see various shapes to indicate the potential quantum jump locations. At all times you will see circles indicating planets and moons, and diamonds indicating Lagrange points. Whilst near a planetary body, squares will show that indicate space stations, upside down houses will indicate the planet's major landing zones, and hexagons will indicate minor landing zones. As I say, these will only show if you're near to a planetary body. Next, let's talk about turret HUD elements. In the centre of the turret, you will find a targeting reticule, much like in the cockpit of your ship. Around this, you will see 2 sets of numbers. Those going vertically represent your angle in degrees away from the default orientation in the x-axis. The horizontal ring shows your bearing, with 0 being the default orientation in the y-axis. As this is a bearing, 180 is facing backwards, 90 is facing right, and 270 left. Note that I say default orientation here. These numbers are never in reference to the nose of the ship, as not all turrets face this way by default. You may sometimes see 2 red bars, one of which shrinks and grows, and these can appear at the top or the bottom. When the growing bar features full length, then you're at the maximum pitch in either direction. Related to this is a small indicator that looks like an IO icon. This can be used to show the quickest way back to the default orientation. Moving down, we have 2 sets of numbers. The left number shows you your bearing along the Y rotation, with the right showing your angle in the X rotation. Moving down again, we have 4 icons. Starting at the top left, we have the gyro stabilization indicator, which is toggled with G. When this is enabled, the turret will automatically attempt to reorientate itself to stay looking at the same spot, by countering the ship's pitch and yaw. Moving down is the staggered indicator, which is toggled with V. When this is enabled, the weapons will fire in an alternating pattern, as opposed to firing simultaneously. On the surface, this seems like a pointless option, as your potential DPS is the same regardless. However, with slow firing heavy hitters such as Mars drivers, an alternating fire mode may be useful versus faster ships, where shots are more likely to miss. Over to the right, we have the relative mode indicator, which is toggled with Q. Off indicates that you are in VJoy mode, with on being FPS mode. In VJoy, moving the mouse in a direction causes the turret to continue rotating in that way until you move the mouse back. FPS mode works like, well, FPS, wherein the turret moves only as far as you move the mouse. Try both, it's personal preference. Finally, we have the ESP indicator, which is toggled with E. As explained in the first part of this video, it's personal preference, so try with and without. It should also be noted that ESP cannot be enabled if relative mode is also enabled. Between these four icons, we have the velocity limiter. This is controlled with either W and S, or with the mouse wheel, and it is used to specify the maximum speed that the turret is able to rotate at. If it is greyed out, then this setting has zero impact. However, pressing the left shift to enable it will allow you to control how fast the turret can pitch and yaw. I personally see no use in this, but others may find usefulness if they're trying to get snipe shots. Finally, there are a few miscellaneous icons that I should make mention of. As you fly your ship, you will often encounter random words appearing on the HUD. These are all self-explanatory, such as shields down, and so I won't be showing these. Another icon you may see are small white triangles at the side of the screen. These indicate HUD elements, such as landing icons or quantum markers, which are currently off screen. And that just about covers everything. If there's anything we missed, please do let us know, or if there's anything else you would like us to take a look at. And with that, we thank you for watching, and we'll catch you all next time.